The global elites may have been caught covering up ancient sites that mainstream archaeology can't explain.
The director of excavations of Göbekli Tepe has called for me to be sanctioned.
So is he talking about that? Listen to this.
She cannot begin to explain the extent of the destruction which she witnessed that morning.
How many of those pillars are still buried and not excavated yet? Almost 200?
Is this carvings or what?
If there is such a thing as an ancient conspiracy theory, this is it.
Yo, what's good? We're back with another one.
It's showtime.
If there is such a thing as an ancient conspiracy theory, this is it. I recently made a video exposing that one of the world's oldest and arguably the most mysterious ancient site on Earth has been essentially infiltrated by powerful outside forces, which are now inexplicably deferring a full excavation of Göbekli Tepe to future generations, bizarrely stating that they will be focusing on tourism and conservation rather than large-scale excavations as done in all the years prior, going as far as to say that a complete excavation of this profound site is now projected to be as far away as 150 years down the road, which of course makes absolutely no sense. Why on earth would they pull back excavation efforts when Göbekli Tepe is estimated to only be 5% excavated?
They're trying to hide history, bro.
Remember, this is for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah, but there's some serious shit happening here, bro.
The global elites may have been caught covering up ancient sites that mainstream archaeology can't explain. Göbekli Tepe is huge, at around 22 acres or 12 soccer fields, yet only 5% of the entire site has been excavated, even though excavation started almost 30 years ago in 1995. The entire site is comprised of about 20 circular stone enclosures, only 6 of which have been dug up and not even fully at that, along with over 200 extremely sophisticated pillars up to 20 feet tall and 10 tons each, and only 72 have been unearthed.
This is mad. Why would they not want to dig it up?
We know what we're gonna find, bro.
Something wild about Göbekli Tepe. How many of those pillars are still buried and not excavated yet? Almost 200?
It's like 5% of it's been excavated.
And they found it by accident in the 90s.
They did.
That's what's crazy. Wasn't it a sheep herder?
Yep. Yeah, it's a pot-bellied hill. Yeah, he found something sticking out of the ground.
What's this? Let me kick the dirt away from this thing, and then what the fuck?
Yeah,
and
giant.
You find 12,000-year-old massive stone structures.
Yeah.
That predate what we think of as history by 6,000 years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Can't believe someone just found it by accident.
They buried it on purpose, bro.
So when they get to the bottom, the archaeologists looking at the bottom layers of Göbekli Tepe are like, this is 12,000 years old. The burial layers, not the stonework, but the layers at the very bottom that start to build up of dirt, right, that are burying the site.
Yep.
Now, in some cases...
So that means the stonework is older? Or...
It has to be at least that old.
Yeah.
It can't be really be younger unless there's another drastic, that like they dug through all that stuff. And
the idea is that the people that were making and using these arrowheads were just like very primitive hunter-gatherers that would not be capable.
Up until this point, that's who they were. You see what I'm saying? Up until the point of the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, those hunter-gatherers were considered primitive hunter-gatherers who never really built anything astonishing.
Yeah.
And they
definitely not monumental.
They didn't have pottery. The name of this culture is called the PPNA, Pre-Pottery Neolithic A, because there's a PP in B.
Pre-Pottery Neolithic A.
Yeah. So they didn't have pottery, yet they were making gigantic standing stone circles by flattening bedrock.
There's no way they could build all that and not be able to make pottery.
Humans weren't the first ones here, bro.
The view, really for decades, that civilization began about 6,000 years ago. But then suddenly out of the blue comes Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is 11,600 years old. It's 5,000 years old than the supposed oldest megalithic structures, and it's an enormous megalithic structure, probably the biggest megalithic structure on Earth, because so much of it is still underground, although we know what's there because of ground-penetrating radar. Highly sophisticated, 20-ton pillars, beautiful astronomical alignments. deliberately buried by the people who created. They ran it for about 1,000 years and then they deliberately buried it. And archaeology is still struggling to explain this. This is one of the mysteries of Göbekli Tepe. That the archaeology does show this quite clearly, that when the work began on Göbekli Tepe 11,600 years ago, the entire population there were hunter-gatherers. And how, in God's name, do a group of hunter-gatherers wake up one morning and create something like this enormous scale? And then the mystery deepens, because at the same time that they're building the megalithic site, they're also suddenly doing agriculture.
It's sad how much money they spend every year on war, but yet they can't dig this up.
They can afford to dig it up, right? They just want to turn it into a tourist trap like the pyramids.
A whistleblower who has worked at Göbekli Tepe reached out to me to let me know that there are protective roofs that they installed over the site that don't even function properly. They were meant to conserve the site and protect the exposed ruins from the elements. But do you see all this snow? This is there despite the roofs above. All the snow just simply blows right in and is messing up the excavation and eroding the ruins. They spent millions of dollars on shoddy infrastructure in a blatant rush to make millions of dollars from tourism.
How can they get away with this?
It's the WEF, bro. They can do whatever the fuck they want.
It seems to me that since the tentacles of the WEF infiltrated excavation management of Göbekli Tepe in 2016, that ever-constant 5% figure I discussed earlier seems directly related. And again, members of the WEF are the ones making decisions here. If they wanted to dig it up, they would. They have literally billions of dollars at their disposal and the decision-making power along with it.
Yep.
I have to say that to not fully excavate this site is a borderline crime against humanity.
Yeah, what the fuck?
So I suppose right about now, it's reasonable to ask, why on earth is the World Economic Forum and their members even associated with management and excavations at Göbekli Tepe? Although I imagine that most of you have heard of Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum by now, but if you haven't, I'll refer you to the comment section for that, as I'm sure others here will help explain exactly who these people are, what they've done, and what their goals are for the future of global civilization.
They're all Satanists, bro.
This is where the Agenda 2030 and the "you will own nothing and be happy" comes from. And yes, that's a real quote by Klaus Schwab, the head of the WEF, or at least former head. And in fact, I'm sure you've probably heard or seen memes saying that you will eat the bugs. Well, the WEF is what they're referring to.
This is fucking mad. You sure this is true?
Yeah, bro. This is bright insight. They're gonna ban him from Turkey.
It turns out that the video I made where I raised questions involving the progress of excavations, or lack thereof, created a firestorm among the powers that be within Turkey, and it turns out that they are very upset. In fact, the director of excavations of Göbekli Tepe has called for me to be sanctioned, essentially banned from the site itself, or potentially the entire country of Turkey. And what I said is the truth, and it comes straight from them. They've outright declared that full-scale excavations will be left for future generations and with a potential 150-year time frame. They very clearly stated that the focus at Göbekli Tepe is now around tourism and conservation of the site rather than excavations. Here is a quote from Dr. Kurul. Plans for the near future in Göbekli Tepe were made on the conservation and consolidation of existing areas rather than further excavations. And this was also stated by Dr. Lee Clare, who is the head of fieldwork and research at Göbekli Tepe, who stressed that future digs will be limited in contrast to the large-scale excavations of years past. In fact, I communicated with him directly on X, where I very specifically asked him to clarify that as of right now, there is no plan to fully excavate Göbekli Tepe for the indefinite future. And he said yes. And he went on to say that he doesn't even think that the site should be fully excavated. And get this, he bizarrely made an excuse that they should wait for technological advances in the future that would allow for less destructive excavation methods. But this is complete and total gaslighting.
What, they're going to invent a new type of shovel and brush?
It's bullshit, bro. They've already got LiDAR to know where to dig.
Can't believe more people aren't talking about this.
They like keeping us distracted, bro.
Common history tells us only hunter-gatherers, cavemen, roamed the earth in smaller tribes. There's no way Neolithic hunter-gatherers who spent all their time, well, hunting and gathering would have ever had time for something like this. It's always been a well-documented fact that hunter-gatherers just don't build intricate megalithic monuments that would take years or decades to complete. It wasn't until farming and animal husbandry were widely adopted, around 4000 BC, that human settlements grew and people had more free time to work on these epic projects. Their official explanation of Göbekli Tepe? Oh, we must have been wrong about hunter-gatherers, so I guess they're the ones that made them. Really. In reality, we really have no idea who built it or how, with archaeologists pointing out that it also appears to have been intentionally buried.
I get why they want to keep it hidden now, but why would they bury it way back then?
Bro, they didn't even know who made it.
This was very weird. And while I was having a little wander around outside, something caught my eye. I saw a stone that was being used as part of a gate post, just in someone's front yard in the village. And I saw it, and something about it made me look closer. I came out here on my own, and I saw this T-shaped pillar. I was like, that looks a bit like Göbekli Tepe. Wait, is this carvings or what? So back here, you've got the back shape of the head. This is an arm that comes down here, elbow, forearm, and there's a hand around the front.
Show us the arm.
It's the arm, elbow, wrist, doing this, exactly like Göbekli Tepe. You've got the hand on one side and you've got the opposite hand on the other. This is potentially a rib or a decorative chest plate or something.
It's mad to think people are just living on top of all of that.
Imagine what else is down there, bro.
There are 3D modelings of animals and other scenes on each pillar, and just take a moment to understand what it really means to be 3D. So, when you have a piece of stone, the easiest and most natural way to etch a drawing into it is to carve into the stone, right? These were carved around the stone, chipping layers away to shape a 3D object that pops out of the stone, just the most difficult and impressive way to carve anything possible. The amount of coordination for this alone, never mind the rest of this site, would have clearly been that of a civilization far more advanced than what was around at the time. Some of these intricate pillars also have a very familiar handbag etched into them, one that is seen in historic artifacts around the world.
It's the Anunnaki, bro. The bag represents knowledge.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you want to see an episode on the Anunnaki.
These so-called handbags, which have been compared to the Sumerians of ancient Iraq 6,000 years later, but even more fascinating compared to ones found all the way over in ancient Mexico. This is of course highly debated, but something that many consider to be potential evidence of a lost ancient global connection that is simply not supposed to have been possible. And while I'm at it, there are other similarities involving the placement of the hands in front of the pillars at Göbekli Tepe when compared to statues in Bolivia and South America, the Moai statues in Easter Island, and even as far away as Indonesia. This could of course be a coincidence, but the placement of the hands at the front is something that's particularly unique. Like I always say, look and think for yourself.
The hands look like that one that girl saw being used as a gate post.
Yeah, bro. The handbags are everywhere.
Well, I visited the British Museum yesterday, and one of the items that I spotted in a cabinet was this stone carving. The look of it was immediately familiar for the pillars at Göbekli Tepe. I'm just really curious as to whether there is any connection. This supposedly dates to 2500 BC, so 4,500 years ago. And the inscription, or the details in the museum, show that it was originally from made in Iran. So is there a connection with Göbekli Tepe? Does anybody know?
They're trying to say the ones at Göbekli Tepe are representing roofs.
Yeah, they're clearly bags.
A peer-reviewed study was published on Göbekli Tepe suggesting that it could be the world's oldest lunar solar calendar, which raises many questions involving the possibility that this site was indeed a time capsule that was purposely buried that documented a cataclysmic event that wiped out human civilization 11,600 years ago and was buried so it could be preserved for the future in order to warn us for the next one. And regardless of whether that's the case or not, we will not know what it is until it is further excavated.
I think this just extends the history of humanity. It don't necessarily mean aliens built it.
They're like the pyramids, bro. Anunnaki made the originals and then humans tried to recreate them.
So the Book of Enoch, it talks about the Watchers coming down, or fallen angels, and them basically perverting the ways of God. So splicing DNA together to make these abominations of but they taught the people astrology and root cutting and all this crazy stuff. A lot of the stuff that was depicted on these pillars.
Yeah.
And they also said, which is crazy, that the oldest pillars, the carvings on them, so the ones that are 11,600 years old, the carvings are way more intricate than the newer ones. So it's almost like they were so advanced 1,000 years before. So it's like they digressed almost.
Yeah.
And instead of it being a progression, it was almost like
a regression.
Yeah. And you should look at, there's one carving where it's literally the stone and it has like a tiger or something like three-dimensional popping off of it. It's insane looking.
The thing that I'm finding while I'm looking all of this up, it's interesting, is that they think that the temple was aligned with the stars and in the worship of a deity, but the deity they describe is maybe influenced by a bull, so it's a horned deity.
It's Moloch, bro.
Or Satan.
Dang.
The late wife of Klaus Schmidt is also an archaeologist herself who worked at Göbekli Tepe alongside her husband. So she knows there was destruction, she saw it with her own eyes and reported on it. They literally covered ruins in concrete, which again is just another example of something that is now preventing a full excavation of this site. She was even quoted as saying, "They call it a road, I call it destruction," or the other way around. And went on to say that they are doing everything in a rush that Klaus did not want, as he knew it would destroy Göbekli Tepe, and that she cannot begin to explain the extent of the destruction which she witnessed that morning. She said, and I quote, "My sorrow is hard to articulate. Every time I visit there, I see another fragmentation coming to light." And went on to say that as part of the construction of a protective roof, parts of the wooden walkway have been removed on the assumption that they would be put back later. However, now they are building a permanent concrete walkway instead, she said. And she took it upon herself to share photos on her Instagram at what had taken place. And thankfully, public outrage ensued as these photos circulated the internet, causing massive controversy, which led the Ministry of Culture and Tourism to issue a statement saying that, quote, only construction equipment was used there, and went on to outright deny that concrete or asphalt was used there.
There's clearly photos of them using concrete.
Yeah, bro. They planted a shitload of trees there too.
Yes, all of these trees, 4 orchards in total, were indeed planted on top of buried ruins at Göbekli Tepe more than a decade after excavations first began, which only further validates that there is no intention for the foreseeable future to fully excavate this site, as they would have to cut them all down to do so. And the fact remains that these hundreds of trees are sitting on top of ancient ruins, and their roots could potentially damage those ruins. And it is a matter of fact that it is not possible to fully excavate this site with those trees there. This is the reality of the situation.
This legitimately is a crime against humanity.
It's because they know it predicted the flood, bro.
What they found, there was like these 4 chambers, and they're all facing the star Sirius, but the temples, they like change direction because over 1,000 years the star in the sky, changes because we're moving through the universe and stuff. Jeez. So they're like gradually moving these temples. What they found that was so crazy is that the oldest pillar, that's where they dated it back to 11,600 years ago, but the newest pillar is 10,500 years old. So this thing had been standing for over 1,000 years.
Wacky.
So the flood, in theory, that the whole world talks about, every culture has a flood story, that happened 5,000 years ago. This pillar is 11,000. Yeah. And this is the connection I'm getting to. And then some of the pillars had carvings of humans, animals, and then human and animal hybrids. And they have basically the same scribe of these images of the stars, the heavens, all this knowledge, these crossbreeding of animals and humans.
How are they that advanced that early? That's the crazy thing. People like
the fallen angels.
That's what I'm saying. Like I don't understand how people don't question that.
Yeah.
The fact that we still don't know how the pyramids were completely made, like that's all with that. Like there's so many things we're just not asking enough questions.
But
so interesting. I wonder if anyone's ever made that connection before.
I don't know. It's crazy that those stones, like he literally said he found a writing which former generations, so we're talking hundreds and hundreds of years before him, had carved on the rock, and it read what was thereon, blah, blah, blah. It contained the teachings of the Watchers, the fallen angels, in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun and the moon and the stars and all the signs of heaven.
That's wild.
Literally what's on these pillars. And then there's one pillar, and it's the only pillar that has a word inscribed on it. It's the only one. And it just says God.
We need to do an episode on the Book of Enoch.
This is from the Book of Jubilee, bro.
And the Book of Jubilee was supposedly written by Moses, like his own hand. And it talks about the son of Ham. So it would be Noah's grandson. The flood was over, they're off the ark, and the son of Ham was born. I forget his name. But it said, chapter 8, verse 2, and the son grew, and his father taught him writing, and he went to seek for himself a place where he might seize for himself a city. So you'd imagine that they're like the only people in this area, and so they're like, I can just go get whatever city I want, right?
Yeah.
So to seize himself a city, he found a writing which former generations had carved on the rock, and he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it and send owning to it. For it contained the teachings of the Watchers in accordance in which they used to observe the omens of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the signs of heaven.
So is he talking about that?
Yep.
That's where I'm like, is he talking about that? Listen to this. The Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey.
Yes.
They discovered what they are pretty darn sure was Noah's Ark was found in Turkey.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, bro.
It's entirely possible. Entirely possible.
Dude.
And I looked it up. So the Ark was discovered on a mountain called Mount Ararat. A-R-A-R-A-T. Ararat, I guess. Which is in Turkey. That's 404 miles away from these pillars. And so I'm like, did this dude walk this distance, because like you would probably set up camp where your boat is, So he went out to seek a city and found these writings written on stone that were from the Watchers, these fallen angels.
Wait, this is mad.
Told you, bro. Graham Hancock's been talking about it for years.
In the case of Göbekli Tepe, one of the very special things about it is that it was deliberately buried. They ran that site for about 1,000 years, from 11,600 to say 10,600 years ago, and then they closed it down. And they went to great effort to fill up all the enclosures with rubble and to create a hill over the top of it. And that's why Göbekli Tepe then remained untouched for the next 10,000 years. There's no danger of contamination with younger carbon from a later culture. The fact that they found carbon in enclosure D, right by Pillar 43, dated to 11,600 years ago, does firmly connect that place to 11,600 years ago. There are later dates from Göbekli Tepe. It wasn't all built in one go, but it stopped around 1,000 or maybe 1,200 years after it started, as though they'd achieved what they wanted to achieve.
I think they just buried it so future generations would find it.
Nah, bro. So we wouldn't find out about the Anunnaki.
In Turkey, you have something called Göbekli Tepe. Now, it's been made famous because why? It predates even Sumerian culture. They're saying now, history isn't 6,000 years old. We can go back to 13,000 now because we know this was an advanced culture 13,000 years ago. But over there's also another place called Sackhead Tepe. Sackhead Tepe, in my opinion, is even older. They have these gigantic stone pillars, and on these pillars are etched animals that are not from that region. How did people know what the animals looked like in other parts of the world to etch them into these gigantic megalithic stone pillars? Pretty interesting. And the other thing about that area is the majority of it was covered up by sand, but not sand from the area. Somebody covered that entire area with sand from over 400 miles away.
They must be excavating this place, right?
Nah, bro. The WEF got everything.
So WEF has billions of dollars and is directing all progress on this site. They could dig it up if they wanted to, so what are they trying to do here? Something similar is happening in Gunung Padang, another site in Indonesia that was once a megalithic structure in ancient times. Some even say a pyramid, possibly the oldest one on Earth by a long shot. This place isn't as flashy as it's all broken up today, which only adds to how old it might be. We don't know for sure, but some estimates put it at over 27,000 years old, so naturally we should be putting some work into the site for more precise dating. Again, some ground-penetrating radar revealed a system of tunnels and caverns beneath it as exposed by Graham Hancock in Ancient Apocalypse. We don't yet know if they're natural or man-made, but they're definitely worth exploring. Professional geologists have pushed for more excavation of the area, which could be another monumental archaeological discovery. Yet almost no progress has been made for over 10 years, and there's even less public info on this dig than Göbekli Tepe. And once again, who are the decision makers at Gunung Padang? Well, the current Minister of Education, Culture, Research and Technology of Indonesia is this guy, Nadiem Makarim, a position that is appointed by the president of Indonesia himself and typically oversees digs like these, specifically through the culture department. Nadiem is another billionaire who also happens to be a member of the WEF in a position called a global shaper. Man, these guys got some creepy ass titles in their organization. Agenda contributor, global shaper, what? Well, Nadiem's director general of culture is this guy, Hilmar Farid, who admits to having the power and resources to support all activities in Gunung Padang. Yet referring to the project is quoted as saying this is certainly the last priority on an ancient site that is suspected to be almost 30,000 years old. Are they hiding something about our civilization's past, and why?
We gotta do an episode on the WEF, bro.
Yeah, the algorithm already don't like us, mate. I don't think that's a good idea.
Fuck that, bro. The people need to know.
If you think the WF having any influence over Göbekli Tepe is far-fetched, wait until you hear this. Various members of the WEF have seemingly infiltrated positions that ultimately control literally the world's two oldest archaeological sites on Earth. And the million-dollar question is why? And just as importantly to ask, why would excavations of these two profoundly important ancient sites be deferred to future generations? Especially at Göbekli Tepe, where there are literally over 100 T-pillars that remain buried in the earth. Pillars of which tell us a story about our lost ancient human history, and we will never know what the purpose of this site was until it is excavated.
If it was just about tourism at Göbekli Tepe, why would they stop this from being excavated?
They probably know what's down there, bro.
Tucker Carlson recently spoke at a conference, and it's been getting a lot of attention. And after you watch this video, I think you'll understand why.
Somebody sent me a piece where Media Matters attacked a guy for suggesting that our historical timelines were wrong, and there had in fact been advanced civilizations in earlier moments in time, and that they had been eliminated somehow through climactic events, through natural disasters, and that we're not aware of them in any detail. Well, that's a really interesting hypothesis. I have no idea if it's true. It kind of seems to be true. I'm not emotional about it either way. I'd like to learn more because I think it's really interesting. We have no idea how the pyramids were built, for example. How can we not know that? We sent a man to the moon, and you can't replicate the technology that created the pyramids. You don't even have a good guess as to how they were built. We don't even know when they were built. Those are facts. So a normal curious person would say, well, why don't we know that? And what does it tell us about ourselves and about the past that we don't know? That's what I would think people would ask. They were attacking this guy for asking that question. And I was like, why would Media Matters care about your opinions on the pyramids? Why do they care? Or whether they were big civilizations in Illinois 10,000 years ago, which there were, by the way, that used metal. Amazing. But why would anyone care? Well, they care because that's true. That is just true. And the current version of history that we've been told is not only incomplete, it's just wrong. It's just flat out wrong. Now, I don't know what the truth is. I don't know what it means. I would never claim to. But I know that what I learned as a kid is wrong. And so it is much closer to the truth to say we have no freaking idea how they built the pyramids, and that's kind of amazing. And Media Matters was offended. Now, why were they offended? They were offended purely because it was true.
He's talking about Tartaria, bro. But we'll have to save that for next time.
Hold up, Ted. It was You've Got Red Onion's birthday on Saturday.
We rolled a fat one in your honor, bro.
Come on, Ted, you always roll a fat one. Yeah, big shout out to everyone who donated to the candle fund.
Yeah, shout out, you've got red on you. Mary Jane Valentine, Richard out in Vegas, man like Callahan and brother Rodlock again, and of course the OG Matt Valencourt.
Wait, Richard wanted both of us to shout him out.
Yeah, let's do a word each, bro. You ready? Thank.
You.
Rich.
Bird. Wait, Richard's one word, you fucking donut.
Oh yeah.
Richard, thanks for the candle donation, mate. We really appreciate all you guys. Seriously, thanks so much. But times are hard for everyone at the moment, so we see comments where people say they'd like to leave more. If you guys are short on funds, save it, honestly. We're both lucky enough to have jobs, and we're gonna keep working at this as long as it takes. And we ain't going nowhere, trust us. All the great comments you leave us is more than enough, honestly. Like, that's all the motivation we need. We know we're on the right track, because you guys are telling us.
You guys ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, on that note, there isn't going to be an episode on Monday, but we'll be back with another one the following weekend.
We're gonna try posting on the weekend. Let us know what you guys think in the comments.
And when we're back, we're finally going to get to see the rest of our house, and we're so excited to show you guys what we've been working on.
Yeah, there's really gonna be showtime.
And as always, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.
See you soon, guys.